folks. Hope y'all doing okay today. Thanks for tuning in to another Cruise with Smooth. So, is more always better? It's a question I got for you. And here's kind of what I mean by that. So, using just a fact from the moment that we live in history. Right now, the used car market is insane. I follow several people on social media that are in the car business, in that life. I build them now. I don't worry about the sales or service side of it. But the used car market's just insane. There was one gentleman had sold a truck recently, somewhere in the $70,000 range. It came back in with no miles on it. They bought it, and the asking price on it was $8,000 more than sticker with 10,000 miles on it now, and it's a used truck. Things that don't happen. Another case in point, the Mustang that I bought a little over a year ago now is worth more, and I've put miles on it. Now granted, I've fixed a couple odd things on it that were maintenance issues that were coming. I've done exactly 2 upgrades to the car, which upgrades don't increase the book value. The only people that pay for upgrades are automotive enthusiasts. And even then, they've got to appreciate what you did. So, for example, if you put a huge full body vinyl wrap on a car, if what you did is not their cup of tea, as it were, the car's worth no more money to that individual. Now, if you find someone that likes the design, they'll pay you for it, but that guy, he's just going to rip it off and do something else. Everything's more expensive now. None of those cars got magically better from a, objective measurement. Sure, I've delayed some of the coming maintenance concerns on driving an older Mustang, but that's it. It's no better. I mean, it still runs like it did. It still drives like it did. It still handles like it did. That truck was dead stock, and it was worth $8,000 more than its sticker. It didn't get better. So that's one thing I don't get on why we look at schools that way. I understand that, teachers should be paid, that you when you look at the cost of running a school or a school district, school buses aren't cheap. They're astoundingly expensive for the fact that the majority of them, at least in my state, don't have air conditioning, and the only option that they have is heat. It's amazing how expensive a vehicle can get. I drove a school bus for a couple of years. I was the right-hand man of a couple people that were in high places in the transportation department, and school buses run somewhere around $70,000, or ran somewhere around $70,000 11 years ago for what we get. So I understand the cost of running a school district like that, at least to the point that I can, as far as where I've had my nose into stuff. But there comes a point where you've paid everybody and everything, and you're just spending more money. As a case in point example, now I get that they don't have their own transportation department, but look at Catholic schools. Sure, the tuition's expensive because you don't get to do it on the state dime as far as out of your tax revenue, which is realistically where all that comes from anyway. But they typically have students getting better grades. Come on, dude. And long term, they're doing better. They also have a much higher graduation rate. And they spend, even when you account for transportation costs, they spend far less per student on a Catholic education versus a public school education. I don't think money's the answer to all the government woes. And I think the sooner we elect politicians that will at least agree to that in some areas, the better off we'll be. You do realize that we're $28 trillion in national debt right now, and if you divide that 28 trillion by the U.S. population, it comes out to something approximating $88,000 per man, woman, and child in the United States. So, they're experts at spending money that hadn't been printed or generated yet. Crazy. So anyway, I don't think more expensive always means better. And, you know, there's a web show I watch called High Low. Go figure this, you know, me being a car enthusiast. They'll buy two nearly identical cars for this show. Older cars that are modifiable but cheap enough to justify the purchase and modifying them. They're in their second season right now. The first season they did, you know, track cars that you could daily drive. So the idea was, you know, someone that's on a budget where they can't spend all the money on the car, and they can't compromise reliability too much because it's their daily driver. What's better, the expensive parts or the cheap parts? And so they go through and they do side-by-side comparisons. Okay, so here's the cheapest decent upgrade we could find for this, and here's one of the more expensive upgrades on the market to do the same thing. They do a side-by-side comparison of the two. So as an example, they did on these street legal weekend warrior race cars that they built, one of the upgrades that they did was a braking upgrade. So they did a cheap brake upgrade for, you know, $200-300, and then they did an expensive brake upgrade, all the aftermarket equipment and better parts for, you know, $4,000. Which one's better? Well, obviously the expensive one's going to be better, but does it justify its cost in added braking performance? side-by-side comparisons. And then they made their own call if they were buying this upgrade with their own money to put on a car that they themselves owned. Would they spend all the money on the expensive one, or would they cheap on that one? So I think a lot of times we get so caught up on how much money we spend, we forget to think that some things are rip-offs. That's what I got, folks. Thanks for tuning in. Catch y'all next time.